Really, I want to talk to you. And then today, I have three big topics. One about Japan, also the Ukraine things, and then U.S.-China relation. And then I'm going to start about Japanese things. So, as you know, the Japanese post-war security policy has changed. So how do you evaluate the theft? And then, so I'm talking about the three key documents. And then that's a national security strategy, national defense strategy, and the defense building program. And then, so Japan, allow themselves to do counterattack against other countries. That's big shift, big decision which Prime Minister Kishida said. So what do you say about this?
Yeah, well, the strategic environment in our region is rapidly shifting, and I think we welcome the alignment of interests to the extent that our partners in the region are equally concerned about maintaining peace and stability in the region. And I think on this foundation, I think it's important that the players in the region also take steps to proactively pursue opportunities to maintain stability and peace in the region. And this is, of course, in light of the global situation with the authoritarian regimes, such as Russia, in their unprovoked attack against Ukraine, as well as the PRCs and the PLAs continuing dangerous behavior and provocations in the region. I think it's important that all of us continue to take proactive steps to ensure that peace and stability is maintained.
One more question about Japan. So, as you know, so this year Japan is going to the chairman of G7.
Yes.
And then G7 summit is going to be held in Hiroshima May. So, what do you expect from Japanese leadership for G7 summit?
Well, I think based on the alignment of our interests in maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and in the Indo-Pacific region, I think we all count on Japan's important leadership role in G7, both diplomatically, but also in discussions around maintaining that goal that we share, the prosperity of the region as well as the peace of the region. In previous G7 engagements, we noticed that G7 nations are also taking into consideration the changing global circumstances and the need to reiterate the importance of peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. We certainly hope that there will be continuing attention on this matter, as well as taking joint efforts to ensure prosperity and continuing economic growth under peaceful conditions.
Thank you. And next one is about Ukraine. So the next month, so it's going to be the first year since the start of the war of Ukraine. So what do you say about the beginning of the great power competition or the future of the globalization? So do you think the globalization is not working anymore? And then the competition is going to start, and then the small country like us is going to be involved. What do you think? What do you see?
Well, history has been defined by competition for centuries. And I think that will certainly continue to be part of global politics and international relations. I think the tragedy of Ukraine is a very painful reminder to all of us that the threat to use force by authoritarian regimes that choose to violate the rules-based international order is a very serious challenge for all of us.
Right.
So I think that is a painful but a very real wake-up call to all of us, that there is a lot more we have to do to prevent such atrocities and tragedies from spreading and happening in other parts of the world, especially as Taiwan is involved. We face a continuing threat to destabilize the region, to change the status quo by force from the PLA and the PRC government. And so I think as we seek opportunities to continue to engage with the world, you asked about globalization. I think whether it is disruptions of war or disruptions of pandemics and other global events, we see how vulnerable we all are, whether it is humanity or economic prosperity, supply chains, and it's all the more important that the world is further engaged and focused on preventing such tragedies from happening.
So regarding the globalization, so actually the last week, according to the report, the U.S. has secured, had an agreement with the Japan and the Dutch government to restrict export of some advanced chip, making machinery to China. So that is, we have a globalization, but at the same time, so some group, some nations is the grouping and to against the camp. It's China. So what do you think about this kind of movement?
Well, I don't think it is a dichotomy between globalization or not. Rather, it is, I think what we are all doing is trying to seek a balance in terms of international trade and commerce. I think the goal the ideal for all of us is that further trade and commerce would support prosperity as well as human progress in the use of modern technologies and innovation. But if such technologies and innovations are used to suppress humanity, such as tools of surveillance and control, or even as tools of violence and war, I think it is also paramount that we take steps to divert such manipulation and distortion of the use of technology. And I think it's important that we continue to seek that balance in supporting the globalization of supply chains, economic prosperity that helps to fuel human progress. But when such technologies are used as tools of suppression, as tools of violence, I think it is also the world's joint responsibility to deal with that.
I want to go back to Ukraine things. So actually Taiwan will extend the military service from from 4 months to 1 year. So could you tell us how concerned you are about the Chinese threat? It's imminent. How do you sense it?
Well, first of all, regarding the threat from the PRC, I think everything we are trying to do now, including strengthening Taiwan's own self-defense, is to have the ability to prevent a conflict from happening, to deter a threat. but also, if in the worst case scenario, to prevent that threat from causing more harm on our people. So I think that is the purpose of strengthening Taiwan's self-defense. But the second part of it is that as we look around the world, instabilities, war, changing global geopolitical circumstances, and as we look at how other countries are also fortifying their self-defense, it is clear that 4 months training, mandatory training, may not be adequate. Our neighbors, South Korea, Singapore, Israel, also have a mandatory conscription service, and their service training period is much longer than ours. And so I think there was a genuine review of global circumstances and the need to be in better shape in terms of strengthening our ability to defend ourselves.
So I have one more question about the context of how to defend you. Mm-hmm. So in the Ukraine war, the U.S. and Western support Ukraine reclaiming their territory, but they don't want Ukraine to escalate the war and strike inside Russia. So do you understand that Western position on this? I mean, Ukraine, they are not allowed to do the counterattack to Russia. So just defending their territory, that's okay. But they could not end the war. So they have to continue to fighting. So how would you feel if you were in the Ukraine's position? I mean, the Taiwan.
Well, I think, as I said, everything we are doing is to prevent Taiwan from being in Ukraine's position. And I think it is also clear in our distinct history and geopolitical circumstance that Taiwan seeks to defend, and the only one escalating tensions in our region is the PRC and the PLA.
All right. So from him, so he is asking about U.S.-China relation.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Thank you for today's opportunity to have a conversation with you. So I'm going to ask you about the U.S.-China relationship. President Biden and President Xi met in Bali last November, and they agreed to maintain open lines communication. And also, Secretary Blinken reportedly is going to visit China soon to talk to his counterpart for the first time under this current administration. So my question is, first of all, what is your take on this U.S. engagement with China at this time? And the second one is, what do you expect from Secretary's visit to China?
Well, I think in any circumstance, maintaining open lines of communications is always important to prevent misunderstandings and miscalculations. And that's why communication is needed to better have a predictable environment in favor of stability. And I think that is our understanding of the U.S. intention in keeping open lines of communications. As far as our relationship with the United States, we have built up over the years significant trust and confidence in aligned goals and strategic purpose, and that is aimed at also maintaining peace and stability in the region. So I think it is important that our shared goal is clearly communicated, not only with the PRC, but as the United States engages across the board around the world, that this particular priority in the Indo-Pacific region is also pushed in whether it is senior level communications, but also in various aspects of a comprehensive policy.
Do you have any specific expectation from Secretary Blinken's visit to China?
I see this as an ongoing process of communication for the purpose of preventing miscalculations and avoiding accidents.
Nice. So please allow me to ask one more question, which we didn't submit to you, so it might be kind of difficult for you to answer. But this is about Japan, Taiwan-Japan relationship. So Japanese people are concerned, like Taiwanese people do, about unilateral attempt by China to change the status quo. And then there's growing concern on Taiwan contingency. What is your message to Japanese people or our leaders under this current situation?
It's not really my position to send messages to the Japanese leadership. As I represent Taiwan in Washington, we have an office in Japan that manages the Taiwan-Japan relationship, which I can confidently say is also a very strong and robust relationship. But I think whether it is in Washington or Tokyo or around the region, we share the common goal of advancing prosperity in a stable and peaceful environment. And any disruption of that stability, whether it is a pandemic or unilateral change of the status quo by force, will have devastating consequences, not only on Taiwan, but on everyone else in the region and in the world. We have already lived through 2 years of very disruptive pandemic. This COVID-19 that has disrupted supply chains, that has affected human lives, that has put tremendous costs on humanity. And that has also demonstrated, I think, to Washington, to Tokyo, and all our friends around the world, the importance of inclusion, that Taiwan must also be included in international platforms and organizations like the WHO. And on this, we are grateful for the Japanese government and people's continuing support for Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations where global unity and inclusion is of tremendous significance. We certainly also hope that as we move ahead, there are many more opportunities such as CPTPP, such as deepening our bilateral trade relationship with Japan, but also the requirement of Japan's continuing commitment to support Taiwan's integration in regional trade and economic platforms. I think we will continue to work with our friends in the region to ensure that Taiwan can continue to contribute to peace and prosperity in the region. And we do count on Japan's support for that.
Thank you very much.
The last one. So you are talking about now economic platform, and so you had a negotiating round under the U.S.-Taiwan initiative of the 21st century. So do you want to establish an FTA with the U.S.? And then, so what is the implication of this initiative in the context of countering China?
Well, we just had a very successful and productive round of negotiations in our bilateral trade context. And we hope that these negotiations will lead to a broader bilateral trade agreement and of high standards, of course. Our hope and expectation is that by having a broader bilateral trade agreement with the United States and reaching those high standards in terms of trade and synchronizing global trading standards, that it will also help to pave the way for Taiwan's deepening trade relationship with other partners such as Japan and CPTPP. So yes, it is our hope that we will further deepen our trade partnership not only with the U.S. but with the region as well. And I think Taiwan is taking many steps to prepare ourselves to reach those high standards and expectations. I think you mentioned China in this. I think the main goal of our trade relationship is, of course, to further advance prosperity for the Taiwanese people, but of course in a mutually beneficial way. We feel that our economies, Taiwan and the U.S., are complementary in many ways. We have benefited from decades of very close economic and commercial ties, including very significant investments, bilateral mutual investments lately. We certainly hope that will continue. We also, as you mentioned, China, I think this all comes in the context of the unfortunate steps taken by the PRC government to isolate and marginalize Taiwan, to restrict our international space and opportunities for engaging with the world. And that's why we will cherish every opportunity to engage with the world, to be integrated with the world in a positive way, which also contributes to global prosperity.
In that context, do you welcome Kevin McCarthy's visit?
Well, that's a different subject, but last year Taiwan welcomed 37 members of Congress, including the former speaker. And actually, Taiwan has welcomed congressional delegations to Taiwan for decades. It's been a very robust and important part of our broader partnership. And I think we will continue to welcome congressional delegations to Taiwan. As for specific individuals visiting, including the speaker, I think it will be a decision of the speaker. But as a principle, the people of Taiwan want to be well connected with the rest of the world. The people of Taiwan are very warm and hospitable and always happy to have international friends, especially friends who intend to support Taiwan and stand with Taiwan, to engage with us. I think that has been a tradition, and it has also been the spirit of the Taiwanese people, and that is we will seek to continue to engage with the world.
Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you.